Among the Olympians, Dionysus was unlike any other. He was the god of wine, revelry, ecstasy, and transformation, but also of madness, illusion, and divine punishment. He blurred the line between joy and terror, civilization and wilderness, sanity and frenzy. Dionysus was called the Twice-Born, for his entry into the world was unlike that of any god or mortal. His dual nature, joyous and terrifying, gentle and wrathful, reflected the very power of wine itself, a drink that brings delight, but also chaos. To the Greeks, Dionysus was more than the god of drink. He was a liberator, who freed mortals from their worries, and a destroyer, who punished those who denied his divinity. His myths are filled with journeys, transformations, and moments where mortals learn that to resist Dionysus is to invite ruin. Let us explore the great tales of this enigmatic god. The story begins in Thebes, where the mortal princess Semele, daughter of Cadmus, caught the wandering eye of Zeus, lord of thunder. Zeus descended upon her in secret, cloaked in shadows and disguised in mortal form. Their love blossomed, and soon Semele bore his child. But Hera, queen of the gods, was never blind to her husband's affairs. She disguised herself as an old nurse and whispered poison into Semele's ear. "Are you certain it is Zeus who comes to you?" Hera asked with feigned concern. "Any man could claim to be the king of Olympus. If he truly loves you, demand that he reveal himself in all his divine majesty." Semele, filled with doubt but desperate for proof, agreed. The next time Zeus came, she begged, "Show yourself to me as you truly are. If you are my lover, let me see the god who has captured my heart." Zeus's face darkened. He pleaded with her to withdraw the request, but Semele insisted. Bound by the sacred oath of the river Styx, Zeus could not refuse. In an instant, the skies split apart. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, and Zeus appeared in his full divine form, blazing like the sun. The sight was too much for mortal eyes. Semele cried out as fire consumed her, and she fell lifeless, her body reduced to ash. Yet within her womb the child still lived. With desperate hands, Zeus snatched the unborn infant and sewed him into his thigh, sheltering him within his own immortal flesh. Months later, the god cut open his thigh, and from the womb Dionysus emerged, born not once, but twice. His first mother was Semele, destroyed by fire, and his second was Zeus himself, the Stormbringer. From that day, Dionysus was called Demeter, of two mothers, and twice-born, a god whose very existence defied the boundaries between mortality and divinity. One tale tells of Dionysus traveling across the seas, disguised as a young, handsome man. His skin glowed with beauty, his hair curled like ivy, and his eyes sparkled with mirth and mystery. Sailors spotted him standing alone upon a rocky shore. Thinking him no more than a mortal prince, they seized him, planning to sell him for ransom. Only the helmsman hesitated. "Fools," he warned. "This is no ordinary man. There is something divine about him. Release him at once." But the others laughed, mocking his fear. They bound Dionysus with ropes and set sail. At first, all seemed well. Then the ship began to change. From the planks oozed streams of red wine, soaking the deck with its sweet fragrance. From the mast sprouted vines heavy with grapes, twisting upward like serpents. Ivy curled around the sails, thick and green, until the ship itself seemed a living vineyard upon the waves. The sailors gasped in terror. "What sorcery is this?" they cried. Dionysus smiled gently, and his form began to shift. His body expanded, his face elongated, and his voice became a roar. Before them stood a great lion, mane blazing like fire. At his side materialized a phantom bear, foaming at the mouth. The sailors screamed and hurled themselves into the sea. As they hit the water, their bodies twisted and shrank, their arms becoming fins, their cries turning into clicks and whistles. They had become dolphins, condemned forever to swim the oceans, reminders of the day they defied a god. Only the helmsman was spared. Dionysus turned to him and said, in a voice both gentle and thunderous, "Fear not. You alone showed reverence. Go free, and carry the tale of my power." And so the helmsman lived, honored by the god, while his companions swam the seas as dolphins to this very day. But the greatest tale of Dionysus is his return to Thebes, the city of his mortal mother. There, he demanded recognition as a god. The women of Thebes, seized by divine ecstasy, abandoned their homes and fled to the mountains. They danced barefoot upon the grass, their hair loose, ivy in their hands, as they became the Maenads, frenzied followers of Dionysus. They sang, they drank, they laughed, and in their wild joy, they felt the god himself among them. But the king, Pentheus, grandson of Cadmus, would not believe. To him, Dionysus was a fraud, a corrupter of women. "This stranger dishonors our city," Pentheus declared. "He leads our women into madness. Arrest him at once." Dionysus allowed himself to be captured, appearing before the king in the form of a soft-spoken priest. Chains were placed upon his hands, and the doors of the prison locked. Yet soon the guards heard a great crash. The doors burst open, the chains fell to the ground, and from the shattered palace walls came the sound of flutes and laughter. Still Pentheus refused to yield. Dionysus, calm as ever, offered a temptation. "If you do not believe, why not see for yourself? The women are upon the mountains, worshipping me in their rites. Go, and you shall know the truth. But beware, they would slay a man who intrudes. You must disguise yourself as one of them." Curiosity and pride blinded Pentheus. He allowed himself to be dressed in women's robes, with a thyrsus staff in his hand, his hair braided like a maiden's. Dionysus led him gently to the mountainside, where the Maenads danced in their frenzy. At first Pentheus laughed, thinking himself clever. But soon, the women's eyes turned toward him. In their madness they no longer saw a man, but a wild beast, a lion prowling among them. With screams of ecstasy and rage, they fell upon him. Pentheus cried out, "I am your king. Do you not see me?" But their ears were deaf to reason. Among them was Agave, his own mother, who in her frenzy believed she hunted a lion. She seized her son and tore him apart with her bare hands. With triumph she raised his head high, believing it a beast's prize, and carried it back to Thebes. Only when her madness faded did she see the truth: she had slain her own child. And so Thebes learned that Dionysus is not to be mocked. He brings joy and freedom to those who honor him, but madness and ruin to those who deny his power. After his triumphs across the world, Dionysus came to the island of Naxos, where fate would bind him to one of the most tragic figures in Greek myth. There lay Ariadne, the princess of Crete. She had once saved Theseus, guiding him through the labyrinth with a golden thread so he might slay the Minotaur. For love, she abandoned her home, her father, her family, everything. But Theseus betrayed her. On his voyage home, he abandoned Ariadne as she slept upon the shore of Naxos, the waves lapping quietly at her feet. When she awoke, she found herself alone. The sea stretched endlessly before her. The man she had trusted was gone. She wept bitterly, cursing the name of Theseus, her cries echoing across the cliffs. It was then Dionysus appeared, surrounded by his divine retinue. Satyrs laughed and danced, the Maenads sang, and the air was thick with the scent of wine. At their center was the god himself, radiant with youth, crowned in ivy. He looked upon Ariadne, and instead of pity, he felt admiration. Here was a mortal who had dared to defy her own blood, who had braved darkness and monsters for love, and who had been cast aside for her devotion. "Ariadne," he said gently, "do not weep for the faithless. I will not abandon you." Dionysus took her hand, and in his presence her sorrow melted into joy. He made her his bride, and their wedding was unlike any other. The stars themselves seemed to dance as the earth thundered with music. To immortalize her, Dionysus took the jeweled crown Ariadne had worn and cast it into the heavens. The gems became stars, glittering forever as the constellation Corona Borealis, the northern crown, so that all who gaze upward may remember the mortal woman beloved by a god. Thus Ariadne, once forsaken, became a queen among the immortals, her name woven into the stars. Though Dionysus was twice born, he never forgot the mother who had perished in flame before his first breath. Semele lay in the underworld, among the shades of the dead, her soul wandering in shadow. One day, Dionysus resolved to bring her back. He descended into the underworld, where the river Styx flowed black as night and the air was heavy with silence. Satyrs and Maenads dared not follow him, for none can tread so easily into Hades' realm. Before the throne of Hades and Persephone he stood, ivy twining at his feet even in that lifeless soil. "I am Dionysus," he declared, "son of Zeus, god of wine and ecstasy. I come for Semele, my mother. She was consumed by fire through no fault of her own. I demand her return." Hades studied him with cold eyes. "No soul leaves here without cost," he warned. But Persephone, queen of the underworld, looked upon the young god with sympathy. She saw in him a bridge between life and death, joy and sorrow, madness and clarity. At her urging, Semele was allowed to depart. Dionysus guided his mother from the land of shadows, lifting her into the brightness of Olympus. There, Zeus welcomed her as one of the divine. She was renamed Thy One, the Inspired One, and from that day Semele, once a mortal princess consumed by flame, lived forever as a goddess among the immortals, thanks to the devotion of her son. One of the grandest legends tells how Dionysus journeyed eastward, beyond the known lands of Greece, into the vast and wondrous lands of India. It was not a conquest of blood, but of spirit. He did not march with iron-clad soldiers, but with a wild procession, satyrs with pipes, Maenads with thyrsi, and beasts tamed by song. Tigers prowled at his side, lions pulled his golden chariot, and leopards danced in step with the drums. The people of India resisted at first, raising armies with spears and chariots. But Dionysus did not meet them with slaughter. Instead, he offered wine. He showed them the vine, taught them how to press the grapes, how to drink deeply and lose themselves in joy. Battlefields turned into feasts. Spears fell from hands that now clutched cups. His music rang louder than the war drums, and laughter drowned out the cries of rage. In time, the people embraced him, crowning him with flowers, calling him a bringer of joy rather than destruction. By the end of his journey, the lands of India were not conquered by force, but by ecstasy. This myth revealed a truth: Dionysus was not merely a god of drunken revelry, but of liberation. He freed mortals from fear, from sorrow, from the chains of their own minds. Of all his gifts, perhaps the greatest was given not to kings or warriors, but to storytellers. In Athens, Dionysus was honored with great festivals where plays were performed in his name. From the laughter of comedy to the tears of tragedy, the stage belonged to him. Why? Because theater was ecstasy in another form. It lifted mortals from their daily lives, transforming them into kings, heroes, lovers, fools. In watching, they were transported beyond themselves, just as wine transported the mind into ecstasy. Masks, music, and poetry became sacred acts of worship. Every laugh, every tear, every gasp was an offering to Dionysus, who knew that joy and sorrow are bound together like vines around a tree. Even today, every theater carries a spark of Dionysus, the god who taught mortals the beauty of transformation. When Dionysus roamed the earth spreading his rites, he gathered followers, mostly women, who were swept away by his presence. They left behind their looms, their homes, their duties, to join him in the mountains. These women became the Maenads, the raving ones. In the forests, they danced barefoot beneath the moon, their hair crowned with ivy. They carried thyrsi, staffs wrapped in vines, tipped with pine cones. They sang until their voices shook the trees, their dances wild and untamed. It was said that when they struck the ground, springs of wine would burst forth. Honey dripped from tree branches, and milk flowed from the earth itself. But woe to those who mocked them or tried to restrain them. For in their frenzy, they could tear a beast limb from limb, or even a man who dared stand against the will of Dionysus. The Maenads embodied the dual nature of the god, ecstasy and terror, joy and madness. Through them, mortals glimpsed both liberation and destruction. Orpheus, the greatest musician of all mortals, had descended into Hades to reclaim his beloved Eurydice. Though he charmed the gods of the underworld, his love was lost forever when he turned back too soon. Heartbroken, Orpheus rejected all gods but Apollo, turning away from the worship of Dionysus. "I need no wine, no frenzy, no madness," he said. "Only the purity of the lyre." This insult reached the ears of Dionysus, and his Maenads were filled with fury. They came upon Orpheus as he played alone in the forests of Thrace. His music was sweet, filled with sorrow, but the women heard only blasphemy. In their frenzy, they hurled stones and tore at his flesh. Orpheus was dismembered, his head cast into the river Hebrus. Yet even as it floated downstream, his lips still whispered her name, Eurydice, Eurydice. This myth revealed the cost of denying Dionysus, the rejection of ecstasy, of passion, of life's wildness. For without these, the heart withers into despair. There was once a band of pirates who captured Dionysus, believing him a mere youth of noble birth, someone they could ransom for gold. They bound his hands, but the ropes slipped away as though they were illusions. The helmsman whispered, "This is no mortal, release him at once." But the captain laughed and ordered the ship to sail. Suddenly, the sails filled with an unnatural wind. Vines of ivy and grape erupted from the mast, heavy with fruit. The air rang with the sound of invisible flutes, and wine poured over the deck. The pirates trembled, but it was too late. Dionysus transformed into a lion, roaring with godly fury, while a great bear appeared beside him. Terrified, the sailors leapt into the sea, and as they struck the water, they became dolphins, forever cursed to roam the waves. Only the helmsman, who had spoken with reverence, was spared. Dionysus blessed him, saying, "Compassion for the divine saves even mortals from ruin." Not all kings welcomed Dionysus. In Thrace ruled King Lycurgus, who despised the gods' rites. When Dionysus and his followers came to his land, Lycurgus mocked the women and ordered the satyrs beaten. He even raised his axe against the god himself. Dionysus fled into the sea, where Thetis, the sea goddess, sheltered him. But the punishment was not delayed. Lycurgus was struck with madness, a gift from the god he scorned. In his frenzy, he mistook his own son for a vine and cut him down with his axe. The land grew barren, the people starved, and the gods decreed that only Lycurgus's death could lift the curse. His subjects bound him and left him to be devoured by wild horses. Thus the lesson was carved in blood: those who resist Dionysus's gifts bring ruin not only upon themselves, but upon their lands and people. During the great battle of the Gigantomachy, when the giants rose against Olympus, Dionysus fought alongside the Olympian gods. While Zeus hurled thunderbolts and Athena struck with her spear, Dionysus wielded his thyrsus, a simple staff of ivy. But even such a humble weapon, in his hands, became mighty. He struck the giants with madness, filling their minds with frenzy until they turned their weapons on each other. The battlefield shook with the clash of titans, but Dionysus laughed, drinking deeply of the chaos. In the end, the giants were defeated, and Dionysus's power of delirium had proven as strong as any sword or thunderbolt.